Hi there. Welcome to Off the Shelf. My name is David Batsoffen, and this is a new platform that I recently started looking at authors and their novels. Today, my guest is a rather intrepid traveler. The book is called The Baby Boat, and it's written by Karen Cross, and it's published currently by Rockhopper Books. Karen, good morning. Welcome to you.
Good morning, David. Thank you.
It's only a pleasure. Let's stop the share so you're not confused and you can see me, and then we can chat. I am in awe of people like yourselves, or like yourself, that set out in a time and place where there was no technology for what you were doing. I mean, if you went out on a boat now, you'd have GPS, you'd have satellite phones, you've had EPIRBs, you'd had all that thing. But when you went out on this journey, you had none of that. What made you do it?
I think John had always wanted to sail. We were both in both Joburgers,
Right.
and John had a dream since he was a boy and wanted to cross oceans.
Okay.
And so we met. We were at university together, and he started to slowly indoctrinate me. First of all, we were going to go to England and buy a boat and then sail back.
Right.
But in the end, we bought Vertue and sailed there.
You know, I had to laugh when the book landed on my desk because several years ago there was a TV series. I'm not going to name either the TV series or the name of the actor that was involved in it. Suffice to say, he came from Port Elizabeth, so I knew him very well. And his dream was to sail the world. So he built in Johannesburg a ferro cement boat, which became part of the TV series. And he took it down to Durban, put it in the water, and it sank. And that was the end. That was the end of his dream. And if I remember correctly, said actor eventually ended up in Namibia, living in the desert there.
Well, I think there are lots of stories like that.
So talk me through the process. I'd like to quote from the beginning of your book, if I may, the quote that you use, which is a Mark Twain quote. 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things that you didn't do than by the things that you did do. So throw off the bow lines, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the trade wind in your sails, explore, dream, discover, which I really, really like. And you can put that into any context. But take me through the process in the beginning. I mean, you just didn't buy a boat, hop on, and sail off into the sunset, or did you?
More or less. We, as I say, we finished university. John did engineering.
Right.
And so we lived in a little mine house on the West Rand in Western area.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked as a school teacher, and we saved for 2 years.
Right.
We mentioned that in the book, how in Western area, the building society was in the pharmacist. And one day I went into the pharmacy and I said I wanted to draw R5. And I wanted to buy a lipstick. I probably could have got 10 lipsticks for R5. And she said to me, "You, for a young couple, have saved a lot of money. We've been married for 20 years and we haven't saved this amount." And what we used to do, I think John earned 150 Rand a month and I earned 120 or something. And we literally lived on 25 Rand a month. We could buy half a sheep for 4 Rand and put it in the top of our little fridge. And so after 2 years, we each had 1,350 Rand to live on. And John had inherited a small inheritance from his grandmother, and that bought the boat.
So what year are we talking about?
You're talking about the end of 1969 when we bought the boat. And we set off at the beginning of, or more or less, April 1973. No, sorry, 1970. We came back in 1973.
So aside from buying the boat, did you know anything about, I know you've alluded to the fact that John wanted to sail the seas, but did you know anything about what you needed to do, what needed to be on the boat? As I said in the opening, you didn't have the technology that you have today. So what were you using? Sextants and thumbsuck on board to get direction?
Yes, John had been sailing little dinghies. When his father realized when he was 14 that he was interested in sailing, they built a couple of dinghies. And so he would sail in regattas on Transvaal dams. And then when we left, well, the boat we bought belonged to the ex-Springbok yachtsman Bruce Dalling.
Oh, I remember. There's a name from the past.
Yes, and he had gone over to Hong Kong, and he had her built by Shoyley Shipyard. She was 25 foot. We always say 25 foot 3 inches long. That's just under 7 meters long, 7.7. We were working out the other day. It's the length of 1.5 times my Toyota Yaris. Just put in perspective. She is a very tiny little boat. And she was built by Shoyley of solid Burmese teak. So she's a real classic. And the Vertues are very sought after. She was designed by Mr. Vertue, Vertue. And they're very, very sought after today. And if you see there's a quote on the front cover by Roger Robinson, who actually has started a Vertue owners newsletter and web page. So they're quite sought after little boats because they're very good on the ocean, even though they're so small.
Why are boats named she? Why aren't they he's?
Because they're so beautiful.
I could think of other things.
And they're erratic. Erratic.
Yeah, well, there you go. I suppose that
and my husband just said they're hard to control.
Yeah, I didn't want to go there. I thought I'd let him do that. You can tell him if he wants, he can step into frame. You know, you don't have to continue looking over your shoulder while John hides off camera.
Well, some of the questions he might answer better than I would.
John, join in. Come on, it's fun. I'm sure we can make space for both of you. There you go. Good morning. Welcome to you, Skipper.
Good morning. Good morning, David. Good morning.
You're going to have to scooch up a little bit so I get your whole face. There you go. That's a bit better. When we come to answer, if you come to answer a question, just sit slightly forward, John, then I can see you, or the whole of your face, that is. So let's go back. So it's 1970. It's a wooden boat. It's the size of a desk in an office somewhere. How do you, and before we even get to the name of the book, which is The Baby Boat, we'll find out in a moment why. How did you survive living in such a cramped space and you're both still here?
Yes, it was a very small space. Our kitchen, which is the galley, our lounge, our garage, because often we had a sort of what you call it, auxiliary engine for going into port or getting away from a ship or something. So that often broke. So it became your garage as well. Everything was in one space, but the boat was divided into 3 sections. So the section we basically lived in, if you can think of, I think I'm 5 foot 3 inches or something. From the top of my head to my knees was the size of our living area, or our saloon, because it's divided into 3 sections. So if you sat on the bunk with your feet facing, or sat with your feet on the seat with your feet facing the bow, it would, from your knee, or if you lay down from your knee, it would be under a kind of a cave, which was actually the next part of the boat, which was a hanging locker, and then the other side was the heads, which was a toilet. And then right in front there were 2 more bunks, and then on the other side the person's legs went under the chart table. So it was a very, very small cabin, and the cabin sole, which is a floor, was the size of half a coffee table, because it was very, very narrow. So it was also from my head to my knee in length, and about maybe 1.36 centimeters or something wide.
Wow.
So it was
I mean,
very small.
that,
Very
that,
small area. But the
Mhm.
nice thing about Vertue Carina, and we visited it the other day because she's still in Simonstown where we live.
Mhm.
And she's got a new owner. So Rockhopper Books wanted to see her. And what amazed me was she was very deep. So you could stand on that cabin sole and there was plenty of headroom.
But now,
So a lot of the boat was underwater.
I see what you mean. But now going back to the technology that was in use then and in use now, how did you guys, John, maybe this is your question, and I'm not being sexist, maybe.
No, absolutely.
Okay. Nowadays, there's all sorts of electronics that allow you to sleep at night, and then the boat sort of looks after itself while you're sailing. But back in 1970 or 70 to 73 that we're looking at, was there any technology, or did you just have to stay awake in sort of shifts through the night to make sure you didn't hit other boats or hit a whale or something like that?
David, no, we had a self-steering gear, which was a wind vane that was connected to an auxiliary rudder or a trim tab on the main rudder.
Right.
And you set the boat's direction according to the wind vane. And that should the wind alter course, or should the boat alter course, the wind vane would turn, which through a series of levers turned the rudder in the opposite direction and brought the boat back on course. So
Okay.
we were able to, most of the times the boat steered itself. So we could, we weren't bound to the tiller for the whole period. We could move around the boat, we could do other things, do the normal maintenance and cooking, etc., etc. At night, the boat basically steered itself, but we had trained ourselves to get up every hour and look around the horizon and then go back to bed. So trying to minimize the risk of a collision with another boat. That really was our biggest threat at the time, was being run down by a ship at sea. And we had no AIS or any warning, no radar of any vessels in the area. So the self-steering was a very essential part of the equipment that we had. I think without it, it would have been almost impossible to have achieved what we did.
Karen, looking back, if I asked you today, would you hop in a small boat and hive off into the ocean with no electronics? Would you still do it? Are you keen to tackle this again?
David, we were going to spend our retirement sailing, but we
Right.
ended up, and it was our pleasure to look after 3 aging parents. One died at 103, the other one at 97, and the other one at 92.
Wow. Okay.
And if you read my book, you'll see that I was very, very seasick in the beginning.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yes, very, very, very seasick. It took me from Durban to basically St. Helena before I got my sea legs.
Wow.
After that, I was absolutely fine. I never got seasick again on Carina. But today, if we go for any length of time, I get very, very seasick.
Right.
And I think as you get older, it's harder and harder to overcome it. So we have been, we wouldn't go far because, we're older now. But in actual fact, interestingly enough, our sons, my husband's father, when we got back, built a boat in Johannesburg, a 42-footer. And our son and his partner, Megan, are sailing the high seas. They're busy circumnavigating in her at the moment with all the mod cons.
Oh,
so
my,
it's actually amazing that we can see where they are every hour or so, and we can even see what ships are around them. And our parents knew nothing once we left, and we literally did leave without any experience with a sextant and a ship's clock. And the press came and they wanted our story. They called us teenage Varleys that they would have to come and rescue. But we said, no, we're not going to give our story, because if something goes wrong and we've left our toothbrush behind, then we will feel a fool. So we just left.
When I went for a walk the other day in an adjoining suburb to where we live here in Johannesburg, and I see there's somebody building a boat there, and I have every intention of going back and knocking on their door and asking them why they're building a boat in Blairgowrie and where is it going to end up. I want to be there when they put it on a trailer and take it to the coast.
Yes, very exciting. We had to do that with the boat my dad-in-law built, which, as I say, is much, much bigger than Vertue Carina.
Okay. So now let's go back. So the book is called The Baby Boat. Let's see if I can do that. As we said, published.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. Otherwise, it sort of goes into the blur. That's why. So tell me, why The Baby Boat?
Well, first of all, it was a baby boat. It was an incredibly small boat.
Right.
And you want to answer? No. And we sailed. We sailed from Durban to Cape Town to St. Helena Ascension, a huge arc towards England, and then up to Denmark, where I had family. And we eventually came back to England, where John worked on a tin mine for 18 months.
Mm.
And during that time, I fell pregnant with Peter,
Okay.
our eldest son. And so it was a case of, were we going to sail back with a baby or not? And we decided we could do it.
And
so
you did.
When he was 4 months old, we left England. And it took us, we arrived back when he was 13 months old. And it was a pretty rough journey, because we went right south into the almost roaring 40s, or was the roaring 40s, yeah, right down into the Southern Ocean. We had two very long passages. The first long passage was 56 days on the way up to England before the baby. That was from Ascension Island to England. And then when we came back from Brazil back to Cape Town was 53 days. Without seeing land.
Does Peter remember any of it?
No.
But
he's quite proud of it.
You're probably lucky. Otherwise, therapists the world over would go, we could help him with his quest. So, I'm in awe, and I put you guys in a similar category to the pioneers of the Wild West in America. And certainly the Groot Trekkers, who just said, there's a mountain, let's go over it. And they knew nothing about what lay on the other side. Yet they populated the interior of South Africa. And I think you're a similar couple. Obviously, you're not the first to do it, and you certainly won't be the last. You've just said your son and his partner are busy doing it as we speak, but with all the mod cons and probably a proper flushing toilet. And lots of nice food. But you were part of that whole brigade of, let's just hop on a boat and go somewhere. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, what's the worst that can happen? We park the boat in a harbor, hop on some sort of transport and come home again.
Yeah, I think that would have been pretty difficult in Europe. But yes, I suppose so.
But what I'm saying is, you could have sold the boat. Yes. You could have flown home. I mean, in the 70s, there were planes coming back to South Africa from Europe. Only just, but I don't know which is worse, sailing the 7 seas in a tiny boat or flying in a Dakota or something of similar ilk. Now, you were going to say something?
David, I was going to say that John had been overseas before with his parents on a sort of European tour when he was about 14. Right. I had never been overseas before, never. And I'd never been on an airplane. So I did this voyage before that.
Wow.
I had we saw a TV for the first time when we got to England. That was 1970. We didn't know, in those days, South Africa didn't even have TV.
We only got TV here, I think, in 75, 76, somewhere around there. Yeah. But now the book is made up, is it predominantly of your journals and the notes that you kept and those type of things? Because I looked through to see your days, or some of your days, how they tied up with me in those days, like what the weather was like on my birthday, which was June, and it wasn't great. But what made you keep these diaries? Was it something you'd done, or something you thought, I better do just in case one day I decide to write a book about my experiences?
Well, I think it was more or less that, wasn't it? But do you want to ask that?
Yeah, okay.
No, because I had a logbook. It was just actually a proper book that we bought. Somebody gave it to us, I think.
Yeah.
And it was a sailor's logbook. And so I had a pencil. I used a pencil. It was easier, I think. And I lay on my back even when I was seasick. And I wrote what we had done that day, just to keep a record, basically. And because I thought my parents would be interested. And then I decided that, well, I wouldn't mind writing a book. And when we got ashore, I wrote really detailed letters for John's parents and my parents. Same letter went from the one family to the other family.
Right.
And then my mother started to type them. And when I got back, they were all typed in a book. And I decided to put it together as a book.
Right.
But at the same time, we were very, very hard up. We had come back with $25 in our pockets. And so I eventually went back to teaching. And initially, it was to publish my book. But I got so involved in teaching that I never finished it and never put it together. And I only did that once, just before we retired. I would come down to Simonstown on holiday. We bought a holiday place here. And I would put it all together. But all the drawings, everything in the book, I drew while I was voyaging. So all that is absolutely honest. There's nothing in that book that's embellished. It's very detailed. But as I said at my book launch the other day, I think in those days we used to talk. We used to tell stories. We had no TV. So we didn't. Today, if you try and tell a story, you feel you're talking too much. But in those days, it was
funny
different.
You should say that, because I was thinking exactly the same thing. I was sitting with some friends chatting the other day, and in my head I was going, David, you're talking far too much. You really are. You're like hogging the. And then one of my buddies said, you should write a book. Your life sounds so fascinating. And I thought, well, different strokes for different folks, my perception and their perception is totally different. But I haven't sailed off on a boat anywhere. The only boat I've ever been on was when I worked at the harbor in PE, and that sank underneath us. But that's a whole nother story. It was a lot of fun, but not in retrospect, not at the time. Take me through, or take my viewers through, a day in the life on that boat for both of you. Sort of wake up. What time would you get up in the morning?
Okay, normally we were up.
John, sorry, can I ask you just to scooch in a bit, because you cut off below the nose.
Below the nose. Okay.
There you go. Now I can see your chin.
Okay. Let me just bring that forward.
There you go. That's not.
Is that,
Thank you.
Can still see, Karen?
Yeah, but yes, I can. But at the moment you were going up and down, I felt like I was on board ship. Should I reach alloyed or something?
Yeah. Okay. Normally, we get up. I get up pretty early. If having slept at all, I think we managed to have very little sleep at night, and sleep more, or I slept more, I think, during the day rather than at night. Obviously, dangers were less during the day than during the night. Yeah. So we get up early in the morning, probably first thing on deck, to check that all is well with the sails. The boat took a lot of wear and tear, so there was continual chafing of sails and ropes. There was the checking the sea state, etc. And then we had 2 or maybe 3 navigation periods. So roundabout, okay, we had to, obviously Karen had to get up and do the house chores and make some sort of breakfast. But then around about 10 o'clock in the morning, we took our first sight with the sextant.
Right.
And that involved measuring the angle between the sun and the horizon, and also trying to take an accurate time. So having the angle between the sun and the horizon and the time at which that occurred, you were able to draw what you call a position line on a chart, which meant that you were somewhere on that line. You weren't quite sure where, but you would have been on that
somewhere
position.
on the line.
Yeah. And then at noon, we took a noon sight. Mm-hmm. And that's when the sun is at its apex, at its zenith. So we measured the angle between the sun and the horizon, and from a series of tables, etc., you could then locate fairly accurately your latitude.
Okay.
So, and then in the afternoon, we would do a similar sighting, and the 3 lines that you got, the latitude was obviously a parallel line, parallel to the equator. The morning and noon sights were at about 60 degrees to the parallel line, and you could then locate yourself within what we called a cocked hat.
Okay.
So there was a triangle that you were in that triangle, and you assumed that you were in the middle of the triangle, but the error was the distance between the triangle, the center of the triangle, and the sides of the triangle. So we then positioned ourselves on the chart, and we from then plotted our course and direction for the next period.
Okay.
So from a navigational point of view, that was the sort of the highlight.
Karen, you alluded there, John, to the fact that Karen had to make breakfast. What did you carry on board for supplies? And did you realize sort of, I don't know, 20 days in, if I have one more cornflake, I am going to hurl the entire galley into the ocean and rather eat the bedding?
Almost. David, we lived at a time, as you know, when today's food would have been fantastic if we could have taken liquid fruit with us, or yellow margarine, which lasts quite well, those sort of things. There was only white margarine, for instance. Mm-hmm. And so what we did was we decided that we would live mainly on tinned food,
right?
Which we actually waxed. We took the labels off, and we dipped it in wax, and we had a little code like green for a green pea, and we waxed the food so that it wouldn't rust, and put it into the bilges, which was the bottom of the boat underneath the floorboards. We packed most of the tins in the bilges, and then we had a book where we, if we had 5 tins of peas, we would make 5 little stripes, and every time we ate a tin of peas, we would cross off 1 stripe, because we put the food all over the boat so that we didn't have everything together, so we couldn't eat all the things at once. So that was the tin food. You got this.
Can I stop you there for a moment? Did you ever say, we're going to have peas with our dinner this evening, and then you opened the tin and it was, I don't know, asparagus?
Oh, yes. Well, especially when we were in Brazil, because we couldn't read what was on the tin. So there was, in France, we were able to buy a small roast chicken for Christmas dinner, because we were going to be at sea for Christmas. And when we were in Brazil, the tins had what looked like little chickens, tiny little chickens. So we bought a whole lot of those, and when we opened them up, they were pig's trotters. But what I wanted to say, you spoke about pioneers and the voortrekkers.
Yeah.
Our mothers were very worried about us going to sea. You know, we were only in our early 20s.
Yeah.
So they were actually quite worried about us going to sea. Most worried what would happen if we fought. But anyway, they were very worried about it. And so they decided that they were going to cook some meat for us according to the old voortrekker way.
Okay.
So they took the meat and they prepared it, and then they melted fat. So what the voortrekkers used to do, they would have tins, and then they would melt the fat and pour it over the meat and let it solidify. And and then when they needed some meat, they would scoop it out, melt the fat again, put it back, and make sure that there was nothing sticking out of the fat. So they did this for us, but they put it into Tupperware. Tupperware was just coming into fashion. And so they brought us these big containers of meat on a little 8-meter boat in Durban Harbour. The heat and the moving of the traffic in the harbour so that the boat was bobbing at its moorings. And in no time at all, our boat was a mess. It was full of fat and it was all melting. So in the end, we gave it, much to our mother's absolute disappointment. We gave it to the Zulu ferryman. The Zulu ferryman. They had a party.
We come into the end of our time. Thank you so very much for joining me here. The book we've been talking about is The Baby Boat. It's published by Rockhopper Books and written by Karen Cross. Is the book available as an ebook, or is it only available on the shelves?
Only on the shelves at the moment, but it's going to be an ebook shortly. And yes, it's on the shelves, basically.
Okay. Great stuff. So people, look out for it the next time you're in a bookstore. They used to say available at all good bookstores. I believe that they're good. It should be available at good, bad, and indifferent bookstores. Guys, thank you so very much for joining me. I wish
you, David.
Following winds and good sailing going forward.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, David.